Hi, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ryan Suter. I'm one of the investment managers here at Sharewise, and I'm here with Paul Smith, the CEO of Globe Mining and Metals. All right, so today we're just going to run through a bit of a Q&A. Right, so I've got a couple of questions to start things off, and then for all participants in the webinar, feel free to submit your questions through the Q&A function on Zoom, and I will ask them as they're sent through. All right, so Paul, can you do me a favor and just introduce Globe Metals and Mining to our audience for those who are unfamiliar with the company?
Sure. Thanks very much, Ryan. So Globe Metals and Mining is ASX listed, mining junior. We have a project in Malawi. It is a niobium tantalum project. The project is pre-development, i.e. we've done all the geological exploration. We've declared our JORC compliant resource and reserve, completed a bankable feasibility study, and we are currently in the process of doing detailed refining metallurgical test work to then update the feasibility to then go into execution.
Okay, all right, thank you very much for that one. Now, with that project that's currently ongoing, are there any others that are worth kind of mentioning or considering at this point in time, or is that the main focus for GBE?
Yeah, for us, this project is absolutely the focus to get it on its way in terms of funding and into development. And for sure, we have our eye on one or two other assets, but the main focus here is to get this project underway. And then, yes, I think there will be some interesting news going forward on other assets.
All right, thank you, Paul. Now, regarding the Niobium and Tantalum Refinery and the recent costing announcement, can you just tell us a little bit more about that one?
Yeah, so when we did the first bankable feasibility study, the focus was on mining and concentration and an export of a concentrate to the UAE for refining. The bankability feasibility study didn't really define refining to sufficient levels. So we did an optimization of the whole project. We've changed the refining technology. And just to make a point here, very few juniors actually go the refining step. They normally mine and then concentrate and sell a concentrate. For sure, in this specialized market, to sell a niobium concentrate is challenging, to say the least. Doesn't matter where you are. So we are going the refining route. We are going with the environmentally friendly chlorination route that then produces a much purer pentoxide of niobium and of tantalum. We've elected to also bring the refinery into Malawi. We will build it in Malawi, operate in Malawi. The third aspect of the optimization study was to build this project in two phases. Phase one being 10% of total production. Total production will be around 3,000 tons of oxide per annum. It's important to phase it principally because we have a very specialized offtake market in the pentoxide market. And one has to manage your entry into the market very carefully. The other aspect is that, Malawi is not a mining destination, and we respect that. So we have a lot of greenfield work to do in terms of that, but very comfortable that we will succeed in that process because we have most of the regulatory approvals to go ahead with this project.
Okay, gotcha. And then, so how is GBE going on attempting to kind of optimize the project through cost reduction and risk management? You did discuss briefly and in the cost announcement, there's the two-stage process for how's that going. So can you just tell me a little bit more about that one?
Yeah, so the two-phased approach has two aspects to it. One is obviously operational. In other words, to fund a $350 million project in one go of our current market capitalization is not doable. So we've elected to go phase one, which is 10% of total production. It's around $46 million US, which is definitely achievable and fundable in the environment today. And we have actually just put an announcement out where we have mentioned to the market how we're going to structure the funding to ensure we gain that funding and then minimize dilution for existing shareholders. To date, we feel very comfortable with the response on the funding side, and there will be more news on that front in the short term, actually. In terms of Malawi itself and building this project there, we've had tremendous support from government, and the technology allows for building this refinery in Malawi. So we're pretty chuffed about that as well. One has to be very careful about specialty metals. It's not really about how much you can produce or how big your resources. That's actually quite irrelevant. What is relevant is your access to that market, the type of product you produce, and then obviously the offtake agreements that you sign. So that is 100% our focus. It's not about size. It's not about size at all.
Okay, gotcha. And then, so obviously with the two-stage development approach, it did state that it allowed for a 14 million US cost reduction. Where did you manage to find the ability to cut kind of 14 million in costs out of your initial, prospecting basis?
Yeah, so the original feasibility, which was done by a global major EPCM contractor, I think had all the bells and whistles in terms of mining fleet, of open cast mining fleet, the oxide flotation concentrator was really over engineered. So we had substantial savings on the open cast mining front, on the oxide flotation concentrator, and also significant cost savings in the change of refining technology from hydrofluoric digestion to carbochlorination refining. So carbon chlorination refining, in terms of its capital infrastructure, is way more efficient. So the bulk of the savings actually came in the refining step. So we were really quite comfortable with that. And we have significant support on the engineering side and the technology side in terms of refining. So it's quite a significant team applying their minds to that optimization.
Okay. And then what are the next steps for the project? And then what sort of approximate timeline can we expect regarding future developments for the site?
Yeah, so I think we are, as mentioned at the beginning of the discussion, we are essentially pre-development. So the total focus right now is, number one, is running a pilot scale refinery. So what we have actually built a laboratory scale refinery. We've actually in the process of commissioning that, and we will be producing high purity oxide samples for our key off-takers, which have been identified. That's kind of the immediate step. We will then update the feasibility study really on the refinery side, and then go into decision to execute, obviously ensuring the funding's in place, and then execute the project. The timeline in terms of execution, we're looking at very early 2025 to actually pull the trigger on this project and go into execution.
Okay. All right. And then with the approximate 8 million to be raised through equity, as stated in the most recent ASX announcement, will this value be inclusive of key stakeholder allocations, or will it only contain general issue of shares to the open market?
Yeah, so it's more than likely going to include strategic equity players. So one or two key players coming in for a significant interest in the business. We are in, let's call it, detailed discussions with one or two parties. We kind of pre-announceable kind of level. Clearly, we would announce anything that we need to in terms of the rules. But I think we have some interesting news that will come in terms of equity raise, and parties that are very supportive and are very experienced in the mining area. So some interesting news there. Yes, there might well be a general issue of shares, but that probably won't be the bulk of the 8 million funding. So there might be a bit of a, let's call it, a bridge equity fundraise to keep the lights on, so to speak, but also gives us a bit of headroom to finalize the discussions, the very successful discussions we're having with one or two equity players, which we hope to, tell the market about as soon as possible.
Okay. And are these equity players that you're in detailed discussions with, are they current holders of the company, or would they be new holders?
Yeah, so the current holders will consider their position, and obviously it's up to them to decide participating further. So yeah, I think there will be interesting new parties coming into the shareholder mix, which will be very supportive of existing shareholders, because it would broaden and depth and increase the depth of our shareholder base, which is quite important as we begin to grow quite significantly.
Okay, all right. So we're just going to move on to a couple of submitted questions now. This one submitted here is, what is the expected date of the first samples from the pilot plant being provided to the 14 odd offtake parties quoted at the last AGM?
Yeah. So I think we've mentioned this before. We are hot commissioning that lab scale refinery. We've actually started producing product. There is an optimization of the small refinery that we are going through, which will take a few weeks. So we're talking days and weeks before we start producing actual physical samples that would then support our further discussions with off-takers. So we're looking at weeks. We're not talking about months, and we hope to share with the market quite soon exactly where we are, shed some light on the refinery and its production of sample. But I think it is very important to say this, that we are not producing a ferroniobium. We are not competing against the big players in the market, such as CBMM out of Brazil, which is obviously the kind of gorilla in the market. We are focusing on a very high value product, very high purity in terms of oxide, which will then also command premium prices. So it's a very focused market that we are spending a lot of time on, and hence need to demonstrate the technology and provision of samples.
Okay. Another question here is there any possibility to start an open pit mining to solve possible cost-related issues? And if so, when would that be?
Yeah, I think, as I briefly mentioned at the beginning of our discussion, to produce a 20% oxide, a niobium oxide concentrate, we've done three series of test works. It's very achievable. The front-end engineering design has in fact been completed on the oxide flotation plant, so that's already at BFS level. But to produce a concentrate, it's not easily a saleable product, and it's a very kind of dangerous step to go, because you would probably not have an economically viable operation purely selling concentrate. So the other aspect to that is we have made a strategic decision as Globe to focus on Western market offtakes only. And that's quite important. So all the discussions we're having are with North American players, European players. In fact, we've just come back from Germany, and potentially Japanese and South Korean off-takers. So that's kind of our market focus. And the feedback we've received is that for sure a refined pure product would be imminently more saleable than a concentrate.
Okay. Another one here is what announcements can we expect before the 8 million in equity funding? Do you have a minimum share price in mind, and could this figure be significantly lower or higher than estimated if the share price movement is greater than expected?
Yeah, I think, it would be unfair of me to comment on any detailed discussions that we're having, because I think it would compromise us and the market. So we won't go into those kind of details. But suffice to say that we would never put a cap or limit the movement of our share price. So all our discussions have and will allow the market to judge us in terms of our share price. But I think the important thing to note is the rapid development that is now going ahead in this project, the good news flow, the great achievements we're having with our management team and the refinery in particular, and the very positive response we've had in terms of bringing that refinery back into Malawi. And I think that will materialize and support the equity discussions that we are having. So are we more comfortable about raising that kind of $8 million US? For sure. It might even be more. Those numbers are flexible. And I think the market will support us and reward us, I think, for the efforts being made.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for making that clarification. A couple of other questions here that have been submitted that I'm just going to synthesize. Is there a minimum share price that Globe has in mind in order to raise the 8 million? And if there is a minimum, is there, what is Globe doing in order to increase the share price in order to kind of to get to that level? Or if you're not already comfortable at that level?
Yeah. So look, to answer your question very, very directly, the answer is no. There's no minimum, but then there's no maximum either. So I think there's two sides to that coin. We would certainly not undermine existing shareholders. We're very mindful of their support over time, and I think the share price will reflect the positive news and the ability to raise potentially at a maximum, not a minimum.
Okay, all right. Well, it's good to gain that clarification. And I don't really have any other questions on my end, so I'll just give a last opportunity for the participants to submit anything else. In the meantime, Paul, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think the other aspect I think people would keep an eye on is the market itself. We haven't talked about the niobium market. It is very definitely a ferroniobium and an oxide market. We are focusing on the high-end, high-value oxide market, where it is a defined market, not a defined production base. So it's very similar to the diamond industry or the platinum group metals industry, where the market will dictate how much is required, not how much you can produce. So we're very mindful of that. And that's why we have taken the strategic decision to focus on the high-end, high-value side of the market with Western off-takers who will probably form strategic alliances with us in terms of offtake.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And I've just got another one submitted here. Why did we compare to WA1 in a recent ASX release?
So just repeat the question.
Why did we compare to WA1 in a recent ASX release?
Yeah, well, to date we haven't compared. I don't think A1 has compared us with them. I think A1 has done a tremendous job. They have a tremendous resource. Very exciting for them to see how that project develops. This is a small market. I think most of the players know each other, specifically when you're in pre-development. I think, other players will have a long way to go in terms of getting to the pre-development point. So we may be, years ahead of others. But yeah, as I mentioned, we realize that this market is defined. One has to manage one's entry into the market before one probably overruns the market. So, one has to be sensitive about this. And if you look at the very constructive and supportive we've had from CBMM, for example, where they have always been open door policy, always had a chat, supportive, but obviously not giving any secrets away, but very, very supportive in our discussions with them. And that's the way the market will run. And yeah, we're very supportive of all projects, really. Interesting to see how things develop.
Oh, good to hear. And just the last one to wrap things up. Are there any other companies as far advanced as GBE in being the next niobium miner / producer?
To our knowledge, no. So as mentioned, I mean, if we had the money today, we would actually the board would then make a decision and probably go into execution of this project. That's how developed this project is. So we go into the pre-engineering and then into physical construction. To our knowledge, we don't think there is another project out there at this level. And other than the 3 existing mining operations, 2 in Brazil and 1 in Quebec, Canada, there hasn't been another since for the last 50 years. So yeah, we are ahead of the curve. We will go into production. It will be a fully integrated in terms of refining, which is critical. So we're in a good space, and we must capitalize on that opportunity, which we are.
Okay. Well, that about wraps everything up from my end. So thank you very much for your time, ladies and gentlemen. I always appreciate it. Again, thank you very much, Paul. We found this one very informative.
You're right. Thank you very much for your time, Ryan. Speak
Cheers.
later.